Joe Murphy, I'm back. I want to talk to you more about leadership, but from the perspective of becoming an executive and what it takes to become an executive, at least from a couple studies that I've gone through. One of the key studies that I've looked at years ago was a study from Stanford. If you're not familiar with Stanford, it's one of the premier universities, home of Nobel laureates. Stanford did some studies on executives and what were the qualities that made up an executive and what were some of the indicators that propelled people or employees into the upper decks of the org chart to become an executive. And the interesting study that I came across was overcoming a crisis. This idea of overcoming a crisis has gotten carried out through multiple studies that I've also read. It's a thread. And it came from the aspect where it was usually from home. As a child, I talked about this before in a previous session about twice-borns. But a crisis at home and persevering and getting out of that. The second crisis that came about was crisis later in life. Could have been a divorce. Somebody got sick in the family. Somebody passed away. And then the third was crisis at work. Because most people, when I say crisis, they think about something that went wrong in a business. Now, let me explain to you what I mean a crisis at work, because it doesn't necessarily mean a crisis in the business. It was a crisis in somebody's personal life. Typically, it was this. Somebody got fired. A key indicator. We look at getting fired as one of these things we don't want, and nobody wants to be fired. It's a low point in our lives. You don't want that to happen to you. But if it has happened to you, I don't want you to wear it as a badge, but many people have been fired and they've gotten over it because they've worked through the issues. It may not have been you, but you may have been the scapegoat. And so if I'm talking to you on this item or you got laid off, use this as your crisis to turn yourself into that executive by becoming more self-aware, to be able to be reflective, and to look what happened that perhaps caused you to get laid off or fired. Not everybody gets laid off because it was pure downsizing. It's also a euphemism to get around firing somebody because you didn't get along with the boss or the boss didn't get along with you or didn't like your ideas. Or, let's face facts, felt insecure because of your ideas. I'm Joe Murphy, and I want you to take this crisis, any crisis that's happening in your life or has happened in your life, and instead of looking at it like this, the valley of death, turn it around because you climbed up out of that hole, and give yourself some credit and use this to go forward and propel you. That's what Stanford University study said. This is a key indicator. And if you're looking for somebody in the C-suite, you want to interview people to see if they had a crisis and how they managed it and how they came through it. More importantly, what did they learn? I'm Joe Murphy, and I'm here for your success.